In the summer of 1983, the world of high-altitude mountaineering was captivated by a French couple whose bond seemed unbreakable, both in love and in their shared obsession with the world's most dangerous mountains. Maurice and Liliane Berard were not just climbers. They were partners in a lifelong pursuit to stand together on the highest summits of the planet. They were known for their determination, their warmth, and their unique style, climbing as a couple, relying on each other more than on large teams, and pushing into places where even seasoned Himalayan veterans hesitated. Their next goal was K2. At 8,611 meters, its dark pyramid pierced the sky like a warning. Unlike Everest, K2 offered no compromises, no easy ridges, no forgiving slopes. Every meter was earned with fear, skill, and luck. The Bairds knew the risks and still. They believed this could be their greatest shared triumph. But on K2, triumph can turn into disaster in a single hour. In August 1983, under shifting weather and winds no human should endure, Maurice and Liliane pushed toward the summit. They were last seen near the shoulder, exhausted but determined. After that, silence. Days passed, then weeks. No radio, no movement, no trace. The couple had vanished into K2's icy void, leaving only questions, and a mystery that would haunt the climbing world for years. What happened to them? Why did an experienced couple disappear without a trace? And why 3 years later did their frozen bodies suddenly reappear on that same mountain, almost as if the mountain itself had decided to give them back? This is their story. If you enjoy deep dive true stories like this, consider following K2 Stories so you don't miss the next chapter of this remarkable and heartbreaking saga. Before they ever set foot on K2, Maurice and Liliane Berard had already built a reputation unlike any other couple in the world of high-altitude climbing. Most mountaineers climbed with large, heavily supported expeditions filled with Sherpas, porters, radio operators, and logistics staff. But the Bairds were different. Their climbing philosophy centered on simplicity, self-reliance, and absolute trust in one another. They were, in every sense of the word, a team of two. Maurice, born in 1943, was the visionary. He had a calm confidence that inspired those around him, a quiet but powerful presence. Liliane, 5 years younger, brought an inner strength that was often underestimated. She wasn't just climbing because her husband did, she genuinely loved the mountains. Her determination, resilience, and emotional steadiness balanced Maurice's strategic mind. Friends frequently said that when they climbed together, it was as if they shared one heartbeat. By the late 1970s, the couple had earned respect across Europe after successful ascents in the Alps, the Andes, and eventually the Himalayas. They climbed hard routes, fought through bad seasons, and learned how to depend on each other in the most dangerous environments on Earth. And each time they came back down safely. Their bond deepened, but success in the Himalayas can be deceiving. As every elite climber knows, the mountains don't care how much experience you have or how pure your intentions are. And among the world's 8,000-meter peaks, K2 is the most unforgiving. The mountain had already earned its nickname, a savage mountain, long before the Bairds ever dreamed of climbing it. Its slopes were steep, its weather unpredictable, and its history filled with tragedy. By 1983, fewer than 10 people had ever reached its summit. Dozens had died trying. For Maurice and Liliane, the challenge was irresistible. They believed that climbing K2 together would not only be the pinnacle of their careers, but a defining moment in their shared life's story. They were aware of the mountain's dangers, of course. They studied journals, spoke to climbers who had attempted it, and analyzed weather data. But no amount of preparation could fully reveal what awaited them on the Abruzzi Ridge, the route they chose. And the most famous on K2, their expedition in 1983 was small, almost minimalist. They joined a larger international team for the lower camps, but planned to climb independently whenever possible. They wanted to move light, fast, and connected only to each other. When they arrived at base camp, the scene was both exhilarating and intimidating. Towering seracs groaned in the sun. Avalanches echoed like distant thunder. And above everything loomed the black pyramid of K2's upper slope, steeper, colder, and more dangerous than any mountain they had ever attempted. Despite this, the Bairds adapted quickly. They acclimatized steadily, moving between camps, carrying loads, and adjusting to the thin air. Other climbers admired their teamwork. Maurice was strong on steep ice. Liliane excelled at pacing and conserving energy. They moved quietly, gracefully, and always together. But as July faded into August, the weather began shifting. Storms moved in more frequently. Winds screamed across the ridges with growing aggression, the kind of weather that kills. Still, Maurice and Liliane pressed upward. They reached Camp 3 after a long fight through deep snow. Then Camp 4, known as the Death Camp, perched around 7,900 meters. From there, climbers have one final push to the summit, but only if the mountain allows it. And on K2, the mountain rarely allows anything. On the afternoon of August 6, 1983, the Bairds prepared for their summit attempt. The sky was hazy, the winds uncertain. Some climbers hesitated, others advised waiting, but the couple believed they saw a small window of opportunity, and on K2. Small windows can be the difference between success and failure. They left Camp 4 and were last seen near the shoulder, the final steep section before the summit plateau, and then, nothing. No movement reported. No sighting from above or below. No radio calls. Just a silence so complete, it chilled even the most hardened climbers at Camp 4. The mountain had swallowed them. Search efforts lasted days, but storms closed in, forcing climbers to abandon hope and retreat. With no trace of the couple found, the only conclusion was devastating. Morris and Lillian had vanished somewhere high on the mountain, their fate unknown. For 3 long years, the mystery lingered. Climbers whispered theories. Some thought they fell. Others believed they froze in place. But one thing was certain, K2 does not give back its dead. Or so the world believed until the summer of 1986, when the savage mountain decided to reveal what happened. The summer of 1986 would become one of the darkest chapters in K2's history. Even before anyone found the bearers, that climbing season was already spiraling into chaos. It would later be called the Black Summer, a season where 13 climbers died on the mountain. Storms, shredded camps, and the line between determination and desperation blurred beyond recognition. But amid all that tragedy, one discovery sent a shockwave through the entire mountaineering world. The bodies of Morris and Lillian Berard, missing since 1983, were suddenly found, perfectly preserved in the ice. To understand the emotional weight of that discovery, we must follow the climbers who stumbled upon them. The strange stillness on the glacier. In July 1986, a multinational group of climbers made their way along the glacier below the Abruzzi Ridge. The weather had been volatile, storms rolling in, clearing briefly, then returning with even greater force. That cycle had already cost lives. Morale was low. The air felt heavy with a sense of impending catastrophe. One morning, as the clouds lifted for a few rare hours, climbers moving near the base of the mountain noticed something odd, a shape lying on the glacier, half buried in wind-packed snow. At first glance, it looked like a rock or an old load of climbing gear, but the colors were wrong. The shape was too smooth. When the climbers approached, they froze. It was a body, and not a fresh one. The climbers saw a human form lying peacefully, as if asleep, frozen solid, preserved by years of ice. The clothes, though battered, looked unmistakably like early 1980s mountaineering gear. Ice crystals coated the jacket. The face was partially exposed, features still identifiable. One climber whispered, "Beard, that's one of the beards." The shock traveled instantly through base camp when word spread. A recovery team moved in cautiously, knowing the glacier was unstable. As they uncovered more snow, they realized something even more unsettling. A second body was found not far away. Morris and Lillian, missing for 3 years, had reappeared almost together, as though they had never left each other's side. 3 years in the ice. Experts later concluded that the couple had likely fallen from somewhere high above the shoulder, possibly during their summit push. The fall may have carried them thousands of feet down ice fields and couloirs before the bodies came to rest where they were found. Then, for 3 long years, they remained hidden, covered by snow, protected by cold, untouched by time. The glaciers of the Karakoram moved slowly, shifting and grinding over decades. Something in the summer of 1986, perhaps a thin year of snowfall, a particularly strong melt, or subtle glacial movement revealed them. But for the climbers who discovered the bodies, it felt like something more. They described it as eerie, haunting, almost symbolic, as if the mountain had held on to them for exactly as long as it wanted to. The emotional impact on the climbing community when the news reached Europe, it was devastating. Friends, fellow climbers, and even those who had simply admired the Barrett's courage, felt the loss all over again. For years, people had clung to small hopes. Maybe the couple survived. Maybe they were trapped in a snow cave. Maybe they built a shelter. But deep down, everyone knew. Still, confirmation hurts in its own way. Morris and Lillian were remembered not just as climbers, but as proof of what deep partnership in the mountains could look like. They attempted the world's most dangerous peak as equals, carrying loads, sharing decisions, supporting one another, step for step. Back then, it was extremely rare for a couple to climb 8,000-meter peaks together in such a pure, self-reliant style. Their story had inspired many young climbers in Europe. Now, their deaths became a somber reminder of the cost of obsession, passion, and ambition at the edge of human limits. But the impact didn't end there. The discovery of the Barreds occurred during a season already drenched in tragedy. Climbers had been dying at an alarming rate. Weather windows were almost non-existent. Teams were exhausted and demoralized. The mountains seemed angry, and the appearance of 2 long-lost climbers felt like a message. Some climbers interpreted it spiritually. K2 is reminding us that it never forgets. Others saw it more practically. These mountains hold on to everything, until they don't. Either way, the bearers became part of the legend of K2, part of the story of why it's feared, respected, and approached with humility by even the strongest climbers in the world. A haunting discovery on the Abruzzi route. The climbers who found the bodies said the scene was hauntingly peaceful. Morris lay with his face turned slightly upward, his expression calm. Lillian's body was curled as if she had been resting. The cold had preserved them so perfectly that one climber said, it felt like they were just sleeping, like they might wake up if you spoke their names. But the condition of their gear suggested a violent end. Torn clothing, deep cuts in the fabric, and fractures that hinted at a long, brutal fall. Both were found without gloves on, a sign of severe altitude sickness or the irrational, disoriented behavior that comes just before unconsciousness at extreme altitude. Yet despite the trauma of their final moments, their bodies being found together offered some comfort. They began their ascent together. They faced the storm together. And, in the end, they remained together. In mountain culture, that meant something. The mystery that still remains. Even after the bodies were recovered and the official reports completed, many questions remained and still remain today. Did they reach the summit? Nobody knows. No witness confirmed seeing them at the top. Did they fall because of weather, exhaustion, a failed anchor, a hidden crevasse? No one can say for certain. Why were the bodies found 3 years later, almost untouched? Only the glacier knows. Some climbers believe the bearers summited, completing their dream before disaster struck. Others argue they never made it past the shoulder. The bearers themselves left no clues, no final diary entry, no radio message, no last words. Their story remains suspended between triumph and tragedia, mystery sealed in ice. A prelude to even greater darkness. The discovery of the bearers marked only the beginning of the horrors of the 1986 season. Storms raged, teams struggled, more climbers died, and K2 etched itself deeper into the history books as the deadliest mountain on Earth. By the end of that cursed summer, the bearers' reappearance felt symbolic, a warning, a reminder, a ghostly echo of how small and fragile even the strongest climbers are in the face of nature's indifference. Their story, tragic and beautiful, became one of the most enduring legends of K2. The rediscovery of the bearers in 1986 shocked the climbing community, but to understand the full weight of their story, we must return to 1983, to their final days alive on K2. Their disappearance wasn't simply an accident, it was the outcome of a perfect storm of ambition, exhaustion, and the unforgiving nature of the world's deadliest mountain. The final ascent begins. By early August 1983, Morris and Lillian were both physically weakened, but mentally resolute. Their acclimatization had gone reasonably well, though the season had been plagued with unstable weather. Heavy snows had buried fixed ropes. Avalanche danger was rising. Winds carved into the ridge like blades. Still, they moved upward. Climbers who encountered them in the higher camps said the couple seemed confident but noticeably tired. Their approach had always been minimalist, less support. Fewer supplies, which worked beautifully on smaller peaks but became dangerous on K2. Unlike Everest, where large expeditions maintain robust support systems, K2 offers no safety net. Every step above Camp 3 feels like a negotiation with your own survival. Yet the bearers had something most climbers lacked: absolute trust in each other. They shared food, gear, weight, pacing, and route decisions. While other climbers argued about weather windows and retreating, the bearers remained calm. They believed their chance was coming. And when a faint break in the storms appeared on August 6th, they seized it. At sunrise, they left Camp 4 and climbed toward the shoulder. It was the last time anyone saw them alive. What climbers later pieced together, though no eyewitness survived the climb with them. Other mountaineers reconstructed the couple's likely timeline based on weather records, gear evidence, and the condition of their bodies when found. 1. They likely reached the shoulder late in the day. The route from Camp 4 to the shoulder is extremely demanding: steep ice, mixed climbing, unstable snow. A strong team might take 5 to 7 hours. A fatigued team can take much longer. Many believe the bearers reached the shoulder far later than planned. 2. A storm moved in earlier than forecast. Weather logs from base camp show a sudden, violent shift on the afternoon of August 6th. Wind speeds increased rapidly. Clouds rolled in unexpectedly. Visibility dropped. These microstorms on K2 are infamous for appearing without warning. 3. They likely pushed too high, too late. The tragic irony of many K2 deaths is that climbers often get stuck between two impossible choices: continue to the summit and face nightfall, or turn back and face a deadly descent with no visibility. For the bearers, turning back may have seemed even more dangerous than pushing forward. Exhaustion at that altitude is deceptive. 4. The fall was probably long and catastrophic. The damage on their clothing suggested a high-altitude fall, likely from above the shoulder, possibly from near the summit plateau or the bottleneck. The distance could have been hundreds, even thousands, of feet down steep ice. 5. They stayed together until the end. This is not just romantic speculation. The proximity of their bodies, found only a short distance apart, indicates they likely fell together, or one fell immediately after the other. A rope may have linked them at the time, though it was never recovered. Why they didn't call for help, one of the most puzzling aspects, was the silence. No radio calls, no signals, no messages. But there are several explanations. Extreme exhaustion above 8,000 meters. The human body operates at a fraction of its normal capacity. Climbers move slowly, think slowly, and lose the ability to communicate clearly. Equipment strain radios at that altitude, especially in the early 1980s, were unreliable. Cold temperatures drained batteries within minutes. Sudden accident? If their fall happened, quickly slip, anchor failure, or cornice break, they may have had no chance to use the radio at all. Tunnel vision on the summit. Experienced climbers have admitted that in the death zone, judgment narrows. The summit becomes an obsession. Retreat becomes psychologically impossible. Whatever the reason, there were no distress calls, no warning, just absence. The aftermath in 1983, when they didn't return to Camp 4 by nightfall, other climbers waited anxiously. By morning, hope had already started fading. By the second day, a rescue was impossible. Storms had swallowed the upper mountain. Their disappearance cast a heavy shadow over the remaining expeditions. Some climbers refused to climb higher. Others pushed on, but with a newfound fear. The loss of the Beards reminded everyone that on K2, even the strongest, most experienced climbers can vanish without leaving a trace. After days of waiting and searching, the grim announcement was made at base camp. Maurice and Liliane were presumed dead. Their families in France were devastated. Friends organized memorials. Newspapers reported their disappearance with reverence, calling them the inseparable couple of the heights. Fellow climbers mourned. Deeply few partnerships were as admired or as symbolic. But for many, the lack of closure kept the wound open. Then came the summer of 1986, their return, more than just a discovery. When their bodies surfaced 3 years later, it didn't just answer questions, it raised new ones. Climbers who saw them described the moment as deeply emotional. Many cried, some whispered prayers, others simply stared in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what the mountain had returned. Their faces were peaceful, their posture soft. It looked as though they had fallen asleep and remained frozen in time. Some climbers later said, K2 did not keep them. It only held them long enough for the world to remember. The rediscovery became one of the most unforgettable moments in mountaineering history. It was tragic, it was haunting, but it also allowed their loved ones and the global climbing community to finally say goodbye. A love story written in ice. Maurice and Liliane's story is unlike any other K2 tale, not because they died, but because of how they lived. They climbed together, they faced fear together, they fell together, and for 3 silent years, they rested together until the glacier moved just enough to reveal them. Their tragedy is not only about a failed descent, it is about devotion, partnership, and the fragile line between ambition and fate on the world's most unforgiving mountain. Their story continues to echo through every climber who steps onto K2. The story of Maurice and Liliane Berard didn't end when their bodies were recovered in 1986. In many ways, that was the moment their legacy truly began. Their reappearance on the glacier forced climbers, historians, and even the general public to confront a difficult truth about high-altitude exploration: love. How the Beards changed the way climbers saw partnership. Before their death, most high-altitude teams favored large expeditions with strict hierarchies. Men led. Women rarely climbed 8,000-meter peaks, and climbing as a married couple was often viewed as risky, too emotional, too unpredictable. But the Beards challenged all of that. They climbed as equals. They shared risk as equals. They planned their expeditions not as husband leading wife, but as 2 elite mountaineers partnering together. This was revolutionary in the early 1980s. Their style of climbing, light, fast, deeply personal, later inspired famous pairings like Reinhold Messner and Hans Kammerlander, Simone Moro and Anatoly Bau, and generations of free climbers who believed partnership mattered just as much as strength. Even climbers who didn't agree with the couple's minimalist philosophy still admired what they represented. A marriage built on trust, a climbing team built on respect, a life built on shared adventure. K2 may have taken them, but it could not erase what they stood for. How their story became part of the Black Summer mythology. The 1986 season on K2 became infamous for the sheer number of tragedies that unfolded in just a few weeks. The rediscovery of the Beards' bodies was only one part of a long chain of disasters. The death of legendary Polish climber Tadeusz Piotrowski, the fall of Alan Rouse, the loss of Julie Tullis and Kurt Demberger's near-fatal ordeal, the storm that trapped multiple teams on the Abruzzi Ridge. In the middle of this catastrophe, the Beards' presence on the glacier became symbolic. Some climbers described them as ghosts from a previous era, a reminder that K2 kills no matter the year, no matter the conditions, no matter how prepared you think you are. Others believed their discovery was a warning, a message about the cost of pushing too far, too long, too high. The mood on the mountain shifted the day their bodies were found. Even hardened alpinists felt shaken. Journal entries from surviving climbers described the moment. It felt like the mountain was telling us, "Look at what I can do." The Beards were a mirror. We looked at them and saw ourselves. It was as if the glacier opened its hand and placed them at our feet. Whether viewed philosophically or practically, The discovery added a haunting layer to what was already the most disastrous season in K2's history. The questions that will never be answered even today, more than 4 decades later. The Barrett's final hours remain wrapped in uncertainty. Theories exist, some likely, some less so, but none can be confirmed. Did they summit? No one knows. Some climbers believe they did, pointing to their location on the mountain and the timeline. Others argue they were simply too late, too exhausted, and caught in the storm. Did one fall and the other follow? Their bodies being found close together suggests either they were still roped when they fell, or one refused to abandon the other. Either way, their partnership endured until their final moment. Why didn't they turn back earlier? Climbers speculate. Summit fever, overconfidence, misreading the weather, or simply the exhaustion-induced tunnel vision common above 8,000 meters. But the truth is simpler. On K2, even perfect decision-making doesn't guarantee survival. How did their bodies remain preserved for so long? The cold, the glacier, and the altitude formed the perfect natural vault. Their clothing and features remained intact, frozen in ice for 3 years, until movement in the glacier exposed them. The mountain had hidden them, and the mountain had revealed them. No one can explain the timing. How the Barrett's are remembered today? Walk into any mountaineering museum in France, Italy, or Pakistan, and you'll find their names. You'll find photos of them smiling, climbing, embracing, studying maps together. They were more than a tragic tale, they were pioneers. Modern climbers speak of them with respect and tenderness, as if they were old friends. Some say that their story is still taught on expeditions to show the emotional dimension of climbing, not just the technical one. Their deaths are tragic, but their lives were extraordinary. And among climbers who have faced K2, there is a saying: some people conquer a mountain. The Barrett's conquered hearts. The glacier moves, but the memory stays still. In the years after their rediscovery, the glacier continued to shift. Their remains were eventually carried further down and lost once more, a second disappearance. Some find this poetic, others find it painful. But for many climbers, this second vanishing feels fitting, as if the mountain, after briefly returning them to the world, took them home again. There is something profoundly human about that. Something gentle, in a place known only for brutality. A love story frozen in time. The Barrett's tragedy is not simply a mountaineering accident. It is a reflection of human devotion, of shared dreams, and of the fragile boundary between courage and catastrophe. Their climb was a testament to partnership. Their disappearance was a testament to nature's power. Their rediscovery was a testament to the strange, haunting memory of mountains. Morris and Lillian will forever remain part of K2's story to souls bound by love, ambition, and the cold, unforgiving beauty of the world's most savage peak. Their legacy endures every time a climber looks up at K2 and whispers, "Not today, not like them." The story of Morris and Lillian Berard is not just a mountaineering tragedy, it is a human story carved into the ice of the Karakoram. When climbers speak of the Barrett's today, it is with a mixture of admiration and humility. They were strong, skilled, determined. They were partners in every sense. Their deaths were not the result of recklessness, but of the delicate balance every high-altitude climber faces. One small miscalculation, one sudden storm, one patch of unstable ice, and fate writes its own ending. And yet, the Barrett's story is strangely peaceful. They climbed together, they fell together, they rested together in the cold silence of K2 for 3 long years. And when the glacier finally gave them back, it did so gently, as if returning them to a world that wasn't quite ready to forget. Their faces, still calm in the ice, became a symbol, a reminder that mountaineering is not merely a sport. It is a dialogue with nature, with risk, with mortality. Those who choose to climb the savage mountain know this, and still, they climb. Why? Because stories like the Barrett's continue to inspire, because the line between fear and fascination is thin, and because somewhere deep inside the human spirit, there is a longing to stand where so few have stood, even if the cost is high. Today, their legacy lives on in the hearts of climbers across the world, not because of how they died, but because of how they lived, with courage, partnership, and a deep, unwavering love for the mountains and for one another. As long as people talk about K2, people will talk about Morris and Lillian. And as long as climbers tie into a rope together, someone will remember the couple who climbed side by side until the very end. Asterisk, asterisk, thank you for listening to this story. If you want more true, emotional, high-quality documentaries about K2, Everest, and the deadliest mountains on Earth, don't forget to subscribe to K2 Stories. Asterisk, asterisk at K2 Stories. Every video is crafted for people who appreciate real history, real tragedy, and real human courage. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you how powerful and fragile life can be, then join our growing community. Subscribe to K2 Stories, turn on notifications, and follow us for the next incredible true tale from the world's most dangerous peaks. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. See you in the next story.